this is Kathy Chase. I just wanted to talk about some evidence real quick. When I was born, I was born on Boeckner, and they wanted to use the phrase beck and call with the original address. And I think it's the vital statistics is right across the street from Lincoln Electric System, which I think the name on there is Walter A. Cans. And then you have the Cannes Film Festival. And then in cartoons is where they got, I haven't found a cartoon, one of the old cartoons, but there's some in existence where they're fishing and they fish out of the lakes and they always catch like a boot or a tin can. Pollution. And then you had Woodsy Owl, Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute from the 70s. Anyways, as I was saying, I grew up on Boeckner, and some of the people's names in the neighborhood were Brady Gear, and that's how they correlated the Lilla Bridge there where I went to preschool, with Gear Library being across the street from there and the community playhouse. One time, after we had just moved to the 5511 house, Quail Ridge Circle, one time I went over and had a play date with Brady Gear. And we were playing with change in our closet. And as I said, I took some home, and it was a dishonest thing I had done when I was little. And my mom made me take the change back, from what I remember. The other thing was, I stole a few pieces of candy out of a Brock's vending things inside the doors of the Safeway on 33rd, or actually it was 48th and Pioneers. Most of my life I have been extremely honest. Those were instances when I was a kid, a child, very little, and they use that to plan the dishonesty of my life. And now I don't know when that was put in my hand, whether it was when I lived on Boeckner, and then the idea came about through my grandfather, through the Boeckner, my mother, through I don't know, COINTELPRO through that way, through Beck and Call and Boeckner, COINTELPRO sideways, but it has nothing to do with change, and it has nothing to do with what they put in my foot. Logistics, technology put into my foot. Star backwards, you have like OnStar in your dash, which is newer. It's something they've been putting in recent years. And it's basically like your GPS systems in your car. And then they planned coordinates with the Italy boot, Seoul, Korea, and I guess Deadwood, South Dakota had something to do with it, with treason. As I said, Arbor Day Foundation, Nebraska City. We'd always go down there when I was little to get apples. And they got, let's see, some of the people in the neighborhood of the Boeckner address were Linda Mollick. Then there was the Coach Solage, assistant coach, and he was a head coach for a little while for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. He lived on Boeckner, and I believe Jeff had burnt down that house on Boeckner, and that's where the fires started, instances. Let's see, there's some other names on that block. The Van Ackers, that's where the Van Dorn correlation came from. The Van Ackerman, Ackerman, I believe that was their last name. I went to school with Andrea, or was it Van Acker? I don't know if there was a man on it, Van Acker. I'm trying to remember it totally. They bought the house on Boeckner from us. And that's when they correlated my foot with Van Dorn and then Confederacy. They wanted to take Freebird and make me into a slave, I guess, was their idea. There are other evidences as far as other people that lived on that street. I'm trying to think of people's names. But I don't know, the Brady Bunch scenario, that was the 70s, and that was before my foot. So that's a little confusing. Kitty Carryall, the doll on there. I don't know. That little girl, Cindy Brady, on there, she looked a lot like me when I was little. If you look at the pictures of me when I was a little girl, maybe that's where they got the idea from. George Bush's original home, I believe, one of his homes was on Estes. I think it was Estes. And Estes Lane or something like that. And then they got the Gene Stanley from Kiss. Nancy Stanley gave me ballet lessons. And then the Stanley Hotel, where The Shining was done. Jack Nicholson. And, that's haunted. And so forth. I'm trying to think of some other names. The Schmeling family. Schmeling. Now I said there's a UPS person in the Barefoot in the Park movie. And then Mrs. Stamper was a teacher at Zeeman. Robert Chase's mother, Nancy Chase, was an assistant in the library at Zeeman School. And as I said, they used my childhood books. I think I've gotten most of them, as I said. And, you have wishing wells. And then birthday cakes. And then the book, Not I, Said the Little Red Hen. And them wanting to make me a slave with that book, with the wheat. And then the Toto, correlation. And money making, generating Wonder Bread. And so on, Alice in Wonderland, and so forth. Me footing the bill for, them being rich and wealthy while they say I'm the slave. And, so I'm trying to think of more people on that block. I was very little when I lived there. As I said, I think we sold the house when I was 4. Approximately, right within a year from the time, I guess it would have been that Kim had said her mother died when she was 4, which is an odd coincidence. And then Rob said he moved down to Lincoln on South Haven from Omaha when he was like 4. So those are some weird coincidences. Dorothy and Leroy Ross helped us move. And I believe that was when Dorothy Ross had worked. It was Dorothy or Leroy had worked for Martha Gooch. That's where the noodles came from, and the Dorothy Ross flag. And Dorothy and Toto correlation, and then Dorothy Hedgelin. Just to piece it together for you. And as I said, they use people's names from the neighborhood. The Mac, the Apple lemonade stand they got from me cutting my foot, of course, and me using that program in school. But the McInerney's, McInerny, they lived across the street. And Bob McInerney was in the military. As I said, the Henricks, the Gibsons, the Parks, and the Clarks. And then the Leonards, because it's spelled differently than Leonard Skinner, but it's Leonard, Roger Leonard. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where they'd play make-believe. Ham radio, 10-4, Roger, over and out, me and my children, the destruction of our lives. Roger Waters, From the Wall, and Pink Floyd, and Watergate. And then Dahlman's IGA, there in Edgewood, when I was little. It was in that location when I cut my foot. It's now Russ's Market in the IGA stores. It was an IGA brand store, Dahlman's IGA. And I remember when they got the brand new scanners in the barcode scanners there at Dahlman's. Everything used to be hand rung up until they had the digital laser scanners. And so that's where the Procure came from. The Dahlman's IGA, Cow Jumped Over the Moon, Piggies, roast beef, pork products, Iowa, wheat products and sunflowers, and Kansas, and the coffee, and then the sandwiches, foot-long sandwiches, different types, sub-sandwiches, submarines, the Jimmy Carter, history of Jimmy Carter, the Beatles music, the Yellow Submarine, and the Tax Man with Paul McCartney and McCarthyism. And so forth. Oh, I forgot, Barb Dilly was on the curve, as I said, on Boeckner when we lived there. My father later married her. That marriage was annulled, but years after my parents were divorced, my father had a short relationship, or marriage with her, I should say. They were together for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. But he was only married to her for about a year, I think, or less. And he lived with her in Colonial Hills. That was back right around my late teens. I guess it would have been, I was 20s, early 20s, when he got married to Barbara Dilly. Her husband had died. He had an aneurysm. He fell off the ladder. He was doing work outside, and while he was on the ladder, he had an aneurysm and died from that. Unfortunately, they used painful moments and people's lives to plan the pain of my life, and, and so forth. But, you have corporate ladders, and then you have chief president. So, also there was a house, it was white, like the house that we had bought. Quail Ridge Circle was a big white house. I mean, it's blue now. It's like a federal blue color, like your blue pages. I kind of call it that color. Owned by Robert Sides, the 44th Seostron Shriners. He bought that house when I was approximately 15. I think that's when it was sold. And, anyways, yeah, they use unfortunate events and of people's lives along with other people's names. As I said, I went to school with John Jacobs, and that's where they correlated other people's names. His real name is John Jacobs, and they use that and other people's names, as I said, and it's all just part of the story. Cindy Sabatka, Dave Sabatka stated that they had owned this house because he had told me, owned the house on High Street since the 70s. So I imagine, they had owned this property down the street since before my foot incident. The Sabatkas, Sabbats, and then seances, and Wiccan, and sacrilegion, and cult, and the occult, and oppression and all their crazy stuff.